Hi, Lisa Schermerhorn here on the Grassroots Warrior Network, and I am so excited to introduce to you Sheri Divban. She is an amazing intuitive healer, and she also works with the children. She's all about helping children really learn the way we're supposed to learn. And she's got this amazing project called is it the
Aramus?
Aramus. I was going to say, yeah, the Aramus learning. It's is at a learning center, learning
Mhm.
school, to really help these children develop their gifts and talents. And we were just talking before I hit record about these amazing children who have been diagnosed as autistic and have these labels that are told there's something wrong with them. Meanwhile, this one woman who I spoke to is telepathic. She's had four near-death experiences. She sees geometry. I mean, they have these extraordinary talents and people dismiss them. So, Sheri, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me on again. I know it's been quite some time, but
Yeah.
but it's nice to be back.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the world is pretty crazy. I know I've heard a lot of people talk about the bifurcation that's happening and the new timelines that are happening and the collapse of other timelines. So you're seeing some pretty crazy things out there. I'd love for you to kind of share with the audience about what you're seeing, along with anxiety and a lot of people really having a hard time right now.
Yeah, yes, and I think, from a micro perspective, I think it seems chaotic. It seems destructive. There's a lot of fear. But if shift your perspective more to a macro view, it's actually exactly what's supposed to happen right now. We're in between the two eras of time. So a lot of people are here because they chose to be. And we are moving from an enslavement era to an era of freedom and sovereignty. And that has many labels, the golden era, the Great Awakening, the Grand Rising, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many different ways, the Aquarian Age. So nonetheless, we are moving into a new evolutionary period of time. It's a transition period. So what that looks like from a macro perspective, if like maybe we were watching a movie right now from a completely neutral point, in the movie we would be seeing the fall, the collapse
Right.
of the what was considered normal, the patriarchy, the control system, the enslavement system, all of these things in this movie that we're watching, where the humanity unknowingly was consenting to an enslavement system for a myriad of reasons. And then they start to rise and activate and awaken and remember who they truly are. And that's the part where we go through this fourth dimension. So we've already crossed the boundaries of third dimension. That's done. Well, I wouldn't say it's done for everybody. There are still some very 3D bound people. But we are in the fourth dimensional, what I call the astral war is occurring right now. So it's not a physical war, although there are physical wars occurring in certain parts of the world. This is a metaphysical war. So we are passing through the fourth dimension, which is the part of us that we have to put our ego aside, unravel the traumas. Ancestral healing is occurring, and what I refer to in my books as the loop system. So part of the matrix is
Right.
the karmic loops or cycles, negative loop systems of uh, addiction, betrayal, self-sabotage, not feeling like you are good enough, enslavement, abuse, victimhood, trauma. So those are all, if you want to use, computer terminology, those are just algorithms placed within the matrix that society has been following these loop systems, these cycles, generation after generation, and through epigenetics and quantum entanglement we have been in these cycles generation after generation. So I believe right now, we're in the point of the movie, if we are using that metaphor, where star seeds, large groups of people, are coming in from all over the galaxies that are ascended, meaning they are from a higher density of consciousness, from much higher dimensions, way beyond the fifth, and they volunteer to be human, to be part of the collapse so we can rebuild and restructurize and activate and awaken to our innate knowing that we have always had the power. We never lost it. We just forgot, which is why we talked about that woman who came in with the veil removed. And not everyone is so lucky to come in. They forget when they come through this etherical birth portal, which is the third dimension. You go through, it's called an etherical birth portal. And that portal brings you through into the third dimension. You forget. You forget all of the knowledge. But the cool thing is, it's always there. It's in the subconscious. It's just a matter of can we pull that knowledge when we need it? And that's where we have people who are just natural healers or natural whatever it is that they may be because they're pulling knowledge from other and wisdom from other lifetimes that didn't think that they knew, but they're just remembering. So there's a lot going on right now. Maybe I'll stop
Right.
there.
No, it's interesting because you talk about unknowingly consent, right? So we all came in thinking that, going to school and everything that we learned in the school books, the textbooks that were true, and then slowly learning more about Tartaria and the whole way of living, and more information is coming out about who we really are. And
Yes.
it's hard for us, and so many people are really struggling with the idea that we've been lied to about everything, like everything, that we don't even know who we are. And we're also part of a multiverse. So when you were talking about, people, the veil is thinning. So this woman who I know, Kara Curry, came in with all of her memories. So she doesn't see a distinction between past lives, future lives, parallel lives, whatever. She sees everything and remembers everything. But coming into this was 3D, 4D world, she was not accepted and understood.
Hmm.
So there's more and more of those people coming in, but they don't always have an understanding. When you talk about multiverse, healing the ancestry, that's a large part of what people are needing because they don't realize that they're carrying
Yeah.
stuff that isn't theirs. It could be stuff 10 generations back that's
Hmm.
passed on generation to generation. And so that there's a ways to get rid, and you can't talk about this in therapy. No one's ever going to
No.
access that. And that's what
Yeah.
people don't understand. They're like, "Oh, I've been going to therapy for 10 years, 20 years and I still have this issue." I'm like, "Well, maybe it's not yours."
Exactly. And we come in and we volunteer, and I call us the cycle breakers. So it stops with us. And that's why we're here to do the work. We're more aware, we're having the conversation even about it, right? Like
Yeah.
before, generations before, there was no conversation about it. It is what it, well, my father was not literally my father, but my father was an alcoholic, my grandfather was an alcoholic, my great, and
Right.
it's just an acceptable thing. Or this person had cancer and it just runs in the line. I use quotes because that's not actually true, but we create these realities because we have these belief systems that we're going to get cancer or we're going to be an addict just like everyone else because it's in the genetic line. And that is true to some extent. Energetically and systematically, we can have cellular trauma repeat itself. But what we are not taught as children is that we can override that with our consciousness. So if in our will. And so we co-create, we create our own reality. So we what our dictates thought our I'm sorry, I can't speak. Our thoughts dictate a lot of what we attract. That's what magnetism is, or manifesting is, people use it interchangeably. We create that based on our belief system. And if we're carrying on limiting beliefs of our ancestors, of we've done it this way for generations, well, now we have children coming into this world saying, but why? That doesn't make sense. And so they're asking the right questions. And that's why a lot of children are so different and unique now. And I work with a lot of those children. And I also encourage the adults, the grandparents, and the parents of those children to listen to them because they're coming in to activate the dormant part of us that we forgot. That veil can, just because we came in and it was there, doesn't mean that we can't remove it. And that's where we are right now. And that's why we're seeing so much chaos. And that's why in my clients that I'm seeing, because I work with clients, I should explain. I do soul readings and energy healings, and I help people look at their life from a macro perspective. Let's look at your soul origin, or at least part of it. What other planets have you come from? What did you do in those other lifetimes? What traumas have you been through, or what successes have you had? What knowledge have you accrued? And why did you come into this reality? Are you here to help? Or have you been in this entrapment system? Are you trying to break free? Is it a little bit of both? And then when we put all those puzzle pieces together, we can understand ourselves a little bit more. And then we become empowered and we feel like, oh, everything really makes sense. And what I'm seeing the most right now is because of everything that I've just mentioned. We're like in between two worlds, the old and the new. So we have to have this bridge. We're building this bridge and we're having this identity crisis. So a majority of the population is walking around right now going through an identity crisis. Who who am I? Who's Lisa? Who's Sheri? If we peel back the layers of all the programming of what our teachers all of our lives told us we were supposed to know, and our parents told us we had to do because this is how it's always been done, and any books we read or whatever created that belief system. Right now, we are individually and collectively going through a process of delayering and trying to figure out who we are at the core. What do we actually like? What do we actually enjoy? Who am I? And what are my passions? Minus all the fragmentation and trauma. And that's a difficult process to go through, especially when we're all going through it at the same time. So we have to have compassion for each other. And now we're recognizing that this reality, that part of the algorithm is to divide and separate us so that we look at each other as competition. They do that with women. Why do women hate each other so much? Because they want us to, because they know when women come together collectively in ancient civilizations, the women were powerful and they could when they came together they could co-create anything. And then the men used the power, the strength, and the endurance to go out and make it happen. There's a divine masculine and a divine energy, divine feminine energy. And they've worked so hard to destroy the feminine bond. So now women just hate each other. And men are just in competition and the egos and like who's stronger, who's has more money, who has a better car. You know what I'm saying?
No,
And so we're working through all of those dynamics right now, which is an interesting process.
it's painful when you think about dismantling, because that's what's really happening is there's a great dismantling of everything. And it's the letting go of the ego and everything we thought we knew about who we were and who we are as society. I mean, it's spiritual because there are people who are realizing things about religion. It's emotional, mental, and physical because there's so much that with the trauma and belief systems are can be connected to physical ailments that are going on in the body. It's very complex. And and people are slowly starting to wake up, and there are those who may decide not to wake up at all, and we need to honor that too because they're playing a role. It's important not to go into judgment on people because I know I hear people on both sides. I spend time with people who are far left and people who are, on the right side. And they're saying the exact same things about each other. And that's also part of a psyop is for us to attack each other and divide. And I think one of the most important lessons right now for us is to stop the judgment and just love each other and stop going into judgment. You don't have to hang out with them, but as we raise our frequency and vibration, it's really important to get rid of that ego and not make us better than them or feel less than because we are all equal no matter what. And I know there's a lot of things that you said you mentioned before we got on that you're starting to see in the world. I'm curious what you're seeing energetically of what's going on with humanity right now with all of this happening.
Well, so from a macro perspective, like I said, if you look at it up close, with a magnifying glass, It's seemingly scary and chaotic and disruptive and scary. But from a macro perspective, and what I'm seeing in my sessions is a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity, a lot of transition. And, nobody, imagine or not imagine, remember how uncomfortable it was to go through puberty? All the changes in your body and the mood swings and the hormones and all of that. Like, it's like we're going through a version of puberty right now, all together
Yeah.
at the same time. Just different in different ways. And so, things are coming to the surface, so people are more agitated and more irritated, and some people are going through the grief process and the anger process of, okay, I'm so angry. How could everything be so inverted, and how can they lie to us like that? And then people go through the grief process, and how I they go through guilt and shame. How did I feel so bad? I treated people so poorly, and they have to go through the forgiveness process. So everybody's going through their variation of growth and a rebirth. So the rebirth is what I'm seeing right now. So anxiety, I'm calling it an epidemic, in my opinion, because I feel like every client I work with, regardless if they're adult or child, I work with adults and children all over the world. So I'm talking to people in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South America, everywhere. So no matter your background, religion, male, female, age, or where you are in the world, majority of the population of humanity is experiencing some level of anxiety. And why is that? Because as we go through the identity crisis mode and unraveling and figuring out who we are, all anxiety means is it's alarm bells going on. It's our in our body, our physical body is giving a signal. Hey, you're going down the wrong path. Change needs to occur. Pay attention. And that's why anxiety is kind of an ambiguous label, because anxiety to me can look different to anxiety to someone else, and the physical symptoms can be different for everybody. But we're using the term anxiety as like an umbrella. But really, what's happening is our physical bodies are now reacting. We're having a visceral reaction to the change, and higher frequencies are coming through. We're activating, we're awakening, we're realigning. Gaia is healing. So the Schumann resonance is shifting. Solar flares are bringing in new energy. Our human bodies are actually changing. So, from a cellular level, our cells are now replicating, not in trauma through the epigenetics, but they're replicating in higher frequencies. And that can be uncomfortable because those are like growth pains, physical growth pains when you're growing as a child and your bones hurt, things like that. So there's that happening. And so our DNA is activating, our consciousness is activating, our belief systems are activating and shifting and changing. And so we are literally re-terraforming this reality, so that as we continue to pass through the fourth dimension, we go and anchor into the fifth. And what we are doing right now as a collective, individually and collectively, our toroidal fields, our auric fields are now transitioning. So instead of low vibratory fields that the matrix can loosh off of our fear, our shame, our guilt, all of those things, and division and anger and hatred and ego, our toroidal fields are turning into love and cohesiveness and unity, and they're expanding, because when you're in that frequency, now that's why horses have an auric field that's the size of a football field. Why is that? Because they don't have judgment, they don't have the fear, they don't have any of that. They're just pure love, and we're turning into these pure love. So it's like love bombs everywhere going off in a beautiful way. And what is occurring is we are re-terraforming this grid so that it is conducive for a higher dimensional living. And that is what is happening right now from a macro perspective. And it's absolutely beautiful if you just see through kind of the weeds, the overgrown weeds in the garden, and you just peek through as a kid and you're like, oh, look how beautiful it is over there. That's where we're going.
So one of the things that I think when I was going through this myself was getting over the fear of the fear, right? It's like, oh, I have to change. I don't know how to change, I have to let go of control. I don't know how to let go of control. I want to know what's ahead before I let go of this. And it's always that scene of, leap and then the net will shall appear. It's not the net's there now, jump. And
Yes.
so one of my the greatest gifts that has happened is doing this work of releasing all of my belief systems and releasing my trauma and doing my ancestral work and all of that. What happens is you come into coherence, right? And when you're in coherence, you're creating a higher vibration so that your thoughts can actually create and manifest what you want. Because most
Mhm.
people are focusing on what they don't want. And one of the tools, this is actually, I don't know if, do you know Chris O'Connor?
Hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
he's actually staying with me. He's
Oh, tell
invented.
I know him. Say hi.
I will. He's been staying with me, so he invented this Deems
Yes.
device.
I love that device. Yes.
And so this helps people with their nervous system. And I mean, I still think you need the cognitive work as well along this,
Yeah.
but this helps create the field, right? To go into coherence so you start manifesting. And my abilities have accelerated in such a way to a point where my telepathy has now really started to increase. And even like I was looking for keys, couldn't find the keys anywhere. And it's been driving me crazy for 2 days. Suddenly, I got a flash and I was shown exactly where the keys were. And I went into my car and I opened up was it the little box? Anyway, and there it was sitting there. And I'm like, I've never seen that key there before. It was sitting there. And so more and more things are happening like that things are coming to me. I'm attracting things. This is what I hope that people understand, is that when you focus on all the negative and all the trauma and the bad, which we need to, help people understand that we need to release it. But there's magic happening on the
Yeah.
other side of that, that there's something to look forward to, and it is happening. It's about letting go of control and surrendering and saying yes.
I love that. I think that it part of the scariest part of this whole process is kind of that Munchausen syndrome type of, well, it's safer to be in this because I know it,
Yeah.
and I'd rather just ride it out than take the risk of trying something new, which is very understandable. And it's also part of our programming to get comfortable in set in our ways so that we don't go off the beaten path. We don't go in a different direction that they don't want us to go into. But that heart brain coherence is the sweet spot, and that's what we're finding. So that coherence you're talking about is the magic. So the magic that's happening right now is that the left and the right hemispheres of the brain are communicating, and we got the heart portal activating and awakening and opening and expanding, like I talked about our fields. But now we're communicating with the brain and the heart are now communicating as one. Whereas before they did everything to block it out. And now when you have this heart brain coherence occurring, we have balance. We can think from a neutral perspective without all the emotions.
Yeah.
And then the fear melts away. And what the people don't realize right now is you're exactly right. And this is what I coach people every day. Stop creating what they want you to create by thinking the most negative thoughts. I'm never going to have the money for this. The world's never going to get better. Trump this, that, whatever negative thing you can possibly focus your attention on. What they don't realize is all you're doing is creating for them. You're feeding the machine. You're literally fueling the car that's driving the matrix with your thoughts because they cannot create. So they trick us into projecting our negative thoughts out there. And the more of us that do that, that creates this holographic field of the Matrix. And then we live in destruction. And then they're like, see, I told you so. Well, yeah, because that's what you said you wanted on some level. You're telling the universe doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. And then you get doom and gloom.
Right.
It comes right back to you.
That's exactly right, to a point where We are human creators. We actually create what we think. The problem is, and the gift in it, is that there's so much unconscious information that's part of our field that we are creating things that we don't know that we're creating.
Yes.
Okay. So if there's stuff from our grandparents that is in us unconsciously, and then we're attracting that to us. So the more that we clear, the more we get, and you said it, it's a neutral place. It's getting into the present moment. And I struggled with that idea for so many years. I'd get so angry because I would hear people go, just get into the present moment. I'm like, well, if it were that easy, why
Yeah.
doesn't someone tell me how to get there? Because that was my struggle, is like I try and meditate, my head is spinning, and there are so many techniques and things out there. The more you release the trauma and the beliefs, the more you become neutral. And I remember when I got to that state, I was struggling with the idea of I didn't have high highs and low lows anymore. So, like something that would normally trigger me, I would just sit and observe, and I'm like, why aren't I mad? Why aren't I getting
Yes.
upset? Why? And I literally start beating myself up for not getting upset. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I wanted to get to this state. It's just new. I don't understand it. How, and then I realized the more neutral I was, the more I started creating and the more joy and beautiful things that started coming into my life. So part of the transition is understanding that you're going to start to see the world from a whole different place,
Hmm.
because the trauma is younger versions of us that are acting out. So most people are making dates, like marrying their 7-year-old is making their partner choice, or their 5-year-old is making their career choice,
Yeah.
or their 15-year-old is now running the country. So we want to be adults. We
Right.
need to learn to be adults, and that's something that we have not been taught. We've been taught divide and conquer
Yes.
and
And
judge.
just to follow the schools are just indoctrination systems to keep us in an assembly line, to be factory workers, to be part of the sheeple. It's like the evolution of um, what's the word I'm trying to think of is blind acceptance. You just go with what everyone else is doing, that
Yeah,
sheeple mentality.
yeah,
And now people are starting to break away from that herd, and the lion in them, or that the empowerment in them, is coming forward and activating. But the problem is they're circling because they're noticing not many people around them are, and again, no better or no worse. There's no hierarchy. There's no I'm better than you, but they're struggling because this is another thing I'm seeing. The family or the friends or the network that they've been around their whole life, they're still in that factory mode setting, and they're still in that thinking, and they're and what do you do in that situation? Because now your foundation is crumbled. You seeing through the illusion, but no one around you is seeing through the illusion. Now you're feeling alone. You're feeling isolated. Now you're feeling a little bit nutty. Like one of the first questions I get, and this is not a joke, when I do a session with somebody is, Sheri, tell me I'm not crazy. And before I even say another word or learn anything about them, I say, you're not crazy.
no,
I said you're activating and waking up, but majority of people aren't there yet because there is a lot of interference, unfortunately, too. That they work really hard to keep people at the factory setting, that factory mode, so that we don't have the intuition, we don't follow the gut, we don't follow our imagination, and they take that out of us. They've bred it out of us. They take it out of schools. So the children we don't grow up with our imagination. And we're not taught to be neutral. We're not taught to
yeah,
be mature. So a lot of us are walking around with unhealed inner childs, inner child versions of ourselves. Like you said, our 5 year old, our trauma from 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 years old are coming out in times making decisions for us because that part of us was never healed. So we're making decisions based on the trauma that had happened 15 years ago
Yeah.
from that mindset.
It,
So
yeah.
it's a hot mess.
No, it is. I mean, if you think about anyone who's in the place of sex, power, money, right? And politics and things like that, most of them are actually being run by their younger versions of themselves.
Hmm.
And you get into school, we're taught to get grades, right? So we have to answer the way the teacher wants us to answer. I can't tell you how many people I know who are really talented in math and can come up with the answer in their head and said they were in school and they would always get the answers wrong because they didn't show their work.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Or they did the formula a different way that they had instead of the way they learned. And I think about I grew up thinking that I was stupid because I did not do well in school.
Me
And
too.
and as an adult, it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I was like, wow, I actually am really good at something. Like even being labeled, well, even having learning disabilities, thinking, the idea of writing a best-selling book, or let alone two, when I could barely get through school. I was able to go on to college, but what people don't understand, for me to read, I was self-taught. Wasn't instruct. I had to learn to read over and over and over again and overcompensate for everything. So
Yeah.
it took me longer and it was exhausting. And there's ways for people to learn, and there are things like I love the idea of a school. If someone had taken me as a youngster and just focused on what I was really good at and helped me expand on that instead of focusing on everything that I didn't do well on and making me feel bad and shame because I couldn't do geometry or algebra,
Yep.
but give me a paintbrush and art. I could, as an artist, or writer, all of those things. And they're not really, they're not encouraged.
Exactly. But why? Because they want everybody to be left-brained,
Yeah.
analytical, so they can sit at a desk and have one-track minds, and they don't want us to use the visionary part, the right brain, the creative part, because that's the part that is the most powerful. That's how we create and manifest, and they don't want us to have that superpower. And I was the same as you. I was told many times I wasn't going to graduate. I was stupid. I couldn't do geometry. I failed that geometry twice, actually. I had teachers tell me I was dyslexic. I mean, you name it. I was, and I believed it. I was like, I'm really stupid, but I love to read, and I could write a novel, and I was a beautiful writer, and I wasn't the best painter and drawer, but I enjoyed being outside, and I liked creative things. Why do you think they've taken all of that out of the school system? Because they want the children to have one-track minds, not to think for themselves, and they don't want us to be creative. And that's where the generations have that's where we've gotten to that point now where the children are being labeled autistic, unfortunately, and dyslexic, and all of these labels, because these advanced souls are coming in and incarnating into this planet to be like, hey, no, that's enough. We're out of the box thinkers. We are ascended beings here to show you that there is a better way, and you need to follow your passions because everybody is gifted with something that they are meant to have that's not supposed to be the same as everyone else because when they grow up, they're going to utilize that skill for something really important, which is why I dedicate my life now and the last 5 years to advocating the Aramus Initiative, which is about shifting the trajectory of education for children so that they can be in environments where they can thrive in a conscious-led, holistic learning environment where they're not forced to do anything. They don't have grades, they don't have hierarchies, there's no strict curriculum. It's a passion-led, project-based, animal focused and centered, nature focused and centered, and health and wellness centered. So that beautiful energy device that Chris developed, Imagine having a healing center on every Aramus campus where children can go in and have one of those, or lay
Yeah.
on a PEMF mat, or learn about frequency, learn about crystals and tuning forks and red light therapy. And they learned from 5 years old how to tune into their body and heal with these natural modalities. And they don't rely on Western medicine, and they follow their body's cues, because our body talks to us. When we have a stomach ache, there's a reason for it. When we have a headache, there's a reason for it. We're not taught the root cause. So we're just the doctors just treat the symptoms. So my Aramis initiative is to create the educational system that we have been missing for hundreds of years. And now it's time to reclaim the power so our children can finally thrive.
I want to go to your school.
Me too. I wish I had that, because then I wouldn't have grown up thinking I was stupid. And just like you, I have written best-selling books, and I want to go back to that teacher that told me that I would never graduate and I was stupid. And I want to put that book on her desk and be
Yeah.
like, here you go.
Every
But
summer of my childhood in summer school, every summer, it was depressing. Because, I mean, even if I went to camp, they had to pull me away and sit for 2 hours with a tutor every day. And it was like, it was just, it chipped away at me so much so that I didn't understand why I was here, what my purpose was, what I needed to be here for until I had my break. And that's the thing. I learned to realize that that nervous breakdown that I had 25 years ago that cracked me open at the time, the dark night of the soul, it felt like the end of the world, which became my greatest gift.
Mhm.
That turned into one of the things like, talking about this, Chris, for people who don't know him, Chris O'Connor was part of the 20 and back space program. So this is interdimensional technology. It's otherworldly, it's healing, and it helps create all of these frequencies so that we can manifest. But imagine this in the hands of a child in the schools with that kind of energy where these kids don't have to go through the traumas that we had to, that they just get to be and understand what their gifts are and know who they are. And, this woman, Kara Curry, who I interviewed, she talks about growing up being isolated because she felt so weird she didn't fit in. And more of these kids are coming in. If you see videos of kids with their eyes covered completely in darkness and they can see colors in front of them. They put different colors in front of them and they telepathically can see perfectly and can read using these other abilities, these innate abilities that are coming in now. And we have them, it's about tapping into them. So the more we
Yes.
release, the more we take care of that, and those innate skills start to come up within us.
Yes. And I think that's the scariest part about what's happening in the world right now, to the ones that don't want us to activate, is they're terrified, because once we activate, it's like riding a bike. The saying, like, once you learn to ride a bike, you'll never forget. Even if you 20 years goes by, you get on that bike, you might be wobbly at first, but you're not going to forget.
Right.
Once you activate and awaken, I truly believe that there's no going back. You can try and you can pretend and you can be like, no, it's easier just to act like I don't know, but it's still there. Like, you're activated and you're awakened, and you start to change,
Yeah.
and you start to, everything around you feels different, looks different, and there's no going back from that. And that terrifies the powers that powers that were, I call them the dark players, that have controlled this, matrix, this third dimension, to keep us suppressed. They do not want that. That's why we are heavily targeted as star seeds. All these children are targeted. I talk about this a lot in my presentations when I go into conferences and share, like, all the things that they do to suppress us, to activate, to deactivate us, and to take us out, even, and the 20 and backs, what they do to manipulate us. And that's my only problem with the telepathy tapes. I'm just going to say my piece on this is, I think it's wonderful that they're showing the world the abilities that these children have. but it's starting a movement. And remember, there's always an inversion. There's always a counter move of the dark side. And people are so fixated on now showing everybody what these children can do. And just like I don't believe people should be sharing their blood type and sharing all of their abilities publicly, because there still are dark governments that are out there with these programs looking for specific abilities and techniques and things that people have, not to bring the conversation down, but we have to protect these children. So instead of putting them on a spotlight and keep doing all these documentaries and showing them their capabilities, what they don't realize is now they're showing the bad people who they are, where they live. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, we get the point. Now let's stop now. We don't need to show anymore because we need to keep our children safe. And that we have to be really careful how much we share.
I agree. At the same time, that they're like our standardized tests. That's how they find how
Yes.
how smart. That's when they go after the kids who are really smart. There's ways that they have programs, so it's really about, yes, us protecting our children, getting them out of the system. And I'm curious because you've been working on the school system. Let's say I don't live in Florida. How do I get my child into a program like this, or how can I start something like this?
Well, okay. So the second part of your question is the most important. So I have been talking about this for more than 5 years. And back then it was really hard because there were states and countries that it was illegal to take your children out of public school. There was literally nothing anyone could do. And I felt for the families back then. But the messages that I got at that point was that these children are strong and they've come in with the sole agreement to be the light and to shine and dismantle the technology and be part of the collapse. And so they were supposed to be in public school to shine a light on that there's a problem, that there's a need for change. Otherwise, the parents aren't going to see the need, nothing's going to change, right? So now what I'm seeing is that people have had enough. And if they're in states where it is, you are allowed to make a choice and you can do homeschooling. What I'm seeing more and more of are micro schools and micro pods and homeschool pods popping up everywhere, where if there's nothing in your area, I am coaching parents to say, create your own, even if it's in your living room and there's two, three children in your neighborhood that want to join in. Trust me, it's getting more and more popular. People are standing up because no one wants their children to be indoctrinated anymore. They're not learning anything. It's not a pursuit of knowledge. It's just a pursuit of memorization and program and indoctrination, and they're not gaining anything. That's why when children return from school after summer, they don't remember anything because it was all surface level memorization.
Right.
So it's about advocating for your children and creating what they don't have if you don't have something like that in your area.
Are there programs that people can purchase or books that they can learn? Because for me, if I had little ones right now, all I know is what I was taught, right? I don't know, how do I teach my children to start to think for themselves? What are things, and how do I prevent myself from repeating a lie, right?
Right.
How
So
do I know what's true and what's not true to feed my children?
well, that's the discernment part. So, okay,
Right,
so we're getting into history, social studies. Okay, so that's different.
right,
Basic math and science, for the most part, we want to know the basics, right? So what I tell people is go back to the basics. If you're going to homeschool your child, forget about the curriculums and all these huge workbooks that you can buy that they have to get. Those are just worksheets, and the kids are going to hate it, and it's just going to be just as bad as school. So take them in the kitchen and teach them how to cook. They're going to learn math through measuring. They're going to learn math through measuring things outside with maybe if you're doing some carpentry or you're in the garden learning about photosynthesis in real life in real time by doing gardening and homesteading and agriculture. Teach them how to sew. Take them to the grocery store. See how you do transactions and how you choose what you're buying and where it's coming from and have conversations and have them give the money to the cashier and receive money back. It's all about real life relatability and creating projects so that they really understand what it is they're learning and why. And they're going to learn the rest along the way. And so I tell people, don't be so stressed out about trying to recreate public school at home. That's the biggest mistake people make is they're trying to create school at home. Don't do that. We're unschooling.
Yes.
We are going back to the fundamentals and the basics, and I promise you they'll learn what they need to learn as they go without pressure. Really and truly, only a few hours a day is all they should really be doing academically. And I guarantee you the rest they're going to learn in real life situations by going down out in the creeks and being playing outside and doing robotics or building Legos and having fun. And because that's part of growing up is the social aspect. So take it a little bit, don't take it so serious. Right? That's my biggest advice to people is if you want to do public school, then just put them in public school. If you're trying to create public school at home and with a heavy curriculum and all of this workload, you might as well just send them back to public school. Now, when it comes to his story
Hmm.
and science, the politics and religion, unfortunately, or how unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that's going to be individual belief systems on the family and up to them to decide what they want to share, how they want to teach, and what they want to teach their children. And that's why I don't believe there should be one curriculum. It should be based on what it is that
Yeah,
let the family decide.
I love that. I love that. I think I know a lot of homeschooled children, and this is the misunderstanding of it. I've seen them more resilient, so smart, incredible, like they're not afraid to do things. They question things. And I think that's one of the biggest things that kids have lost the ability to have dialogue and really and discernment and and question everything because we're not allowed to question in school.
Hmm.
and
Exactly.
and it's a skill set that we need throughout life. And so the more you allow your child or the children around you to question, the more resilient they're going to become, the more powerful, empowered they're going to feel because it's not going to be, I told you so. That's where you create the entrepreneurs out there,
Exactly.
not the factory workers.
Exactly. That inquisitive nature creates independence and they're the way showers, they're the innovators,
Yeah.
and you're not provided that opportunity in school. How many times were you told, no, Lisa, that's not right. No, it's this way. Or they don't allow you to be creative. You have to follow the curriculum. And I have a deep respect for teachers because I have a lot of clients that are teachers that are frustrated and angry and say, I went into this career because I wanted to help children. And all I keep getting is pushback from the principals and the education system saying they have to do this in this amount of time and it's about testing and grades and how much money the school gets based on standardized testing. I mean, school is a business because they get money based on the ratings of their school. Well, how do they determine the rating of their school? By standardized testing. So every child takes that test, they get a score, and that average score determines the rating of that school, and that's how much money they get. And it's not about the child at all. It's about
Yeah.
the collective group of the children, and there's no learning
Yeah.
any involved in any of that.
Yeah. I love this. I love this conversation, and I thank you so much for your willingness to really break out of the system and create something that desperately needs to be created and let people know that there are alternatives because as a parent it's scary. And for children, they don't want to be different, and it's about giving them the courage and the discernment and the ability to make their own decisions so they're not swayed so much by other people and other children. And the need
Yeah.
to constantly have to fit in and the whole bullying mentality. How is that grows when they get to middle school? What's not being taught to these children? because they go all of a sudden, everyone gets along. It's like, oh, you have a 4-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, let's play. To suddenly they get into this anger and judgmental place where these kids really need to be guided and taught that that's not the proper way. We need to come from a place of love and treating everyone with respect because there is no one better than another.
Right. Well, and it starts at the home.
Yeah,
Majority of bullies are bullies because they don't get the love, respect,
yeah,
the unconditional support at home. So they go out and they go to school and they take it out on everyone else because they're bullied by their older brother or their parents, or they're not loved, or they're abused, or they have an alcoholic parent, whatever it might be. And you have to have compassion for those children too, because I know, looking back, all those kids that bullied me, I was bullied severely growing up, and I was so angry. And I used to have dreams every night that I was punching them back in the face, and I didn't see a face. I just was punching and punching and punching, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person." But I had weren't what was happening in my dreams is I needed an outlet. I needed to release the anger that was building up inside of me.
yeah,
And I was so angry because I didn't understand why I was being picked on, because I was the nicest kid. I was so quiet. Why am
yeah,
I being picked on? So children need to learn, one, it's okay to have emotions. Two, it's okay. But how do you control it? How do you feel the fire within you and create an outlet? So they're not taught conflict resolution, and they're not
yeah.
given an outlet. They get in trouble if they don't sit still for 6 hours under fluorescent lighting while they're lectured. Are you kidding me?
I
And
know.
then they get in trouble, and then their punishment is to sit out through recess. It blows my mind. I'm like, they need to be outside, and
They
their
do.
punishment is that they can't go outside, so then they're going to be forced to sit still. Even like the whole system is inverted, and it's unfair, and it's
Yeah,
not right for these children,
yeah,
and they're not in an environment where they're thriving at all. And but I believe that's by design, but it takes us as adults to stand up for them, to say I want something better, and to create it. That's our job. It's our
yeah.
responsibility to stand up for them, and that's what I'm doing. That's why I go out and public speak, and I encourage parents, if you don't have anything in your area, create it.
Yeah.
You can make it yourself.
So, what's the best way for people to reach you?
I have two websites. So my main website is sheridivban.com. That's for people who are really interested in having one-on-one sessions with me, or having a session for their child with me, because I work with adults and children. My The Aramus website is aramiscreativelearning.com. So right now we usually offer virtual classes, like extracurricular fun classes like remote viewing, crystals, energy healing, tapping, conflict resolution, all sorts of fun classes. Right now we're taking a break because it's summer, but we're really focused on opening up our first in-person learning center here in Palm Beach, Florida, by the end of this year. We're working tirelessly on raising money and awareness because we are a 501(c)(3), but we're doing a hybrid approach right now. So we're also trying to get investors. So we're focusing all of our energy on getting the physical location open. So we're not offering the virtual classes. But if anyone wants to know more about Aramus Initiative, it's on that website. And if anyone wants to support us, if you don't have money, I understand that. But spreading the word is how you can help me. Share the message, share the vision, to as many people as you can, because people need to know that there is an alternative. We do have a choice. We can co-create this together. And if someone so happens to be an investor or have the money to donate, then obviously that would be helpful as well. But those are the two main websites.
Awesome. Well, Sheri, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation. I so appreciate talking to you, and I look forward to connecting with you again sometime soon.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to the audience for listening in. And it was really fun.
Thank you.